Doing this.
All right, and we're back with another episode of Future Chat. I'm not even going to say the numbers anymore. I feel like we're beyond that. We've made it past 100, and who cares anymore? There, there's a little bit of interesting stuff going on this week, but I think first of all, and this is completely off the cuff because we just decided we were going to talk about it. Mike, you want to talk a bit about automation because of some of the things we've been discussing internally this week with regards to the show. I think that kind of brought things up that had been percolating since Google I/O. Why don't you introduce this topic you wanted to follow up on?
Yeah, we actually didn't really get to this the first time around. I don't even know why we didn't even touch on it, but Google had announced a smart home device, I guess you could call it. It's an Amazon Echo analog uh, called
Yeah,
the Google Home. And according to recent reports, it's quote unquote a Chromecast inside a speaker,
with
which
voice powers, like with the
with
Google
yeah,
Assistant.
I don't even know what that thing is supposed to mean because a Chromecast in itself is fairly rudimentary to begin
Right.
with. So I don't know what else you'd expect a Google Home device to be, but
Yeah.
um, it's essentially operates the same way as the Echo does, where you can kind of say things into thin air and stuff happens.
Right.
As long as this thing is plugged in and listening and linked to specific accounts and whatnot. Um, but I'm more interested in talking not about the specifics of the device itself, but how people want to use it and will be able to use it.
Right.
And that kind of ties into a just a general theme of automation and smart stuff technology. IFTTT ties into a lot of different things now with people's smart homes, and just technology in general. I think all of us, or at least two-thirds of us, can say that we use IFTTT regularly.
Yeah.
And even in this past week that we've been using it, I've found it leaves a lot to be desired. Um,
Well, it. I don't know if it leaves a lot to be desired because the service itself, what it does, is really good. I just think it's very like programmatically, it's very limited. Like it does in programming, there are a lot of things you can do, like basic caveats or basic, not caveats, basic kind of things that programming does. Like there's if statements, which is what if IFTTT is really good at, but they're very basic if statements, and there are loops, and there are all kinds of conditions that you can test. And I think the limitation of IFTTT is really that it's very basic and limited to if one thing happens do this other thing, but there's no looping, there's no other kind of thing.
yeah,
It's one trigger, one response.
yeah. And well, what I found I had to do in this past week is I had to kind of basically string together two
Yeah,
IFTTT recipes. So one gets triggered by another's thing being triggered.
yeah,
Um, and just like and it was a very simple thing I was trying to do, but because you're relying on specific, what they're called ingredients of
yeah,
each either trigger or response to be available, that's made available by the developers of that software or product, you're very tied in or restricted to what you can use. And so, um, just as the example, I was trying to set up a thing where I could put in what I want to post to a spreadsheet, like a Google Sheets, but there was no way to do it directly from one if and then statement. So I had to trigger one and then have it go from that response to the spreadsheet. So I
yeah,
had to make two recipes for that.
yeah.
And I think, ATP said it best as it relates to when they're talking about Siri, and again, another smart technology where they said, no one should have to be a Siri power user in order to use
Right.
it.
Yeah,
And I feel the same thing applies to both IFTTT and a lot of other things, that they have a lot of promise and a lot of functionality, but in order to get the best use out of them and the most functionality, you need to know what you're doing, and it shouldn't have to be that way.
yeah.
But
And I
I
gotta say, like Python has the same issue. Do you know how much I had to learn in order to make a simple program in Python? I just want to be able to talk to Python in natural language and have it do exactly what I want. Is
I
that so
I
unreasonable?
can't tell if you're being facetious or
I
not.
I am being,
how
there
can you
is
not
heavy
tell?
use of sarcasm here.
Well, at first I thought he was being serious, and then it kind of went off the rails there.
What he's asking for is very unreasonable.
But and I don't think it's the same thing with a consumer product. I
Yeah.
know what you're saying, Nick, because that's a basic programming language. This you should
No,
not
no,
if
BASIC is a different language
Nick's
of the
goofy.
quick and visual varieties.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Rob,
Oh man.
do you agree with what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I'll give you a what if. This is something that happened to me yesterday while I was in the shower. I had one of those. This is a combination of automation slash shower thought moments. So I have a Bluetooth speaker in my shower to control music and or podcasts or whatever I'm listening to, and I was thinking to myself, I had like 8 minutes or something left on a podcast, and then I wanted to listen to another podcast, and I thought, how can I set this up automation wise? And again, I was in the shower already, so I was like, I want to listen to this and then this, but there's no way to ask for that with any kind of voice assistant right now. You'd have to be on the device itself to say, and like Apple or the podcast app like Apple's music player do have the functionality to set up like a playlist, so you could put something and then put something in
Like
after
a
it.
queue or a
Yeah,
playlist, yeah.
but there's no way to do that with your voice. And so I'm imagining when you get to a truly powerful voice assistant, you'd be able to say, play Sorry by Justin Bieber, then Hotline Bling. And it would just
Yeah.
be able to know that you meant, like, it would be able to parse that entire thing, go, okay, he wants a playlist. I'll put this and then this. But so I had to just listen to something totally different because after that 8 minutes was up, I was just going to have silence.
Yeah.
And that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having like music or whatever
Yeah.
going on in the shower while you're trying to listen.
Yeah. The exact same thing happens when I'm driving and I'm listening to podcasts and I've gotten into a habit now of knowing if I'm getting close to the end of a podcast and just adding one into the queue.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, like you said, it'll just end and I'm driving, so I'm not gonna fiddle around with the app to load up another episode. But I'd
Mhm.
like to be able to say, play the latest episode of Hello Internet,
Yeah.
and it should know what that means.
Yeah.
In theory, like they're all time stamped. They're all so it's like, and they know Hello Internet. They can parse that and kind of match it to and they can say, oh, do you mean this? And you can, if you need to, you can say, yeah, that's the one I want, and then it
Yeah.
loads it up and plays. But right now, like you said, you have to set up the queue beforehand.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're just kind of left with nothing.
Yeah. And
See,
it's
I thought the shower thing was going to be, if you hear screams, you should adjust the temperature of the water.
see, that would be great.
That would be really good. Yeah.
Like
The other
if you start screaming, just adjust to 37 Celsius and wait
Yes.
for further input.
wait until you're okay. Thank you. The last thing that I would say on automation, or the last main thing that I have to say, kind of anecdotally, is that there are a bunch of things. Like I have a grocery list in reminders that Siri is able to control, and I really like having that. But there are a bunch of entries where it says corn and potatoes, for instance, or
Right.
lettuce and broccoli, because Siri isn't able to, like, if I say add carrots, beans, peas, and candy to my grocery list, it will add that string as one entry, not adding multiple entries. And that's a really hard voice problem to solve because there are instances, probably not in a checkbox reminder list kind of situation, but there are instances where you would want that to be parsed as one item. But for this case, I wanted it to be 4 items, but you have to go in and say, add peas to my groceries list, and wait till it's done. Add beans to my groceries list, and like that is tedious already. Like I'm already bored of that. And
And
so,
what of the Oxford comma?
exactly. I mean, in this case, you probably wouldn't need it because you're wanting 4 different entries. But yeah, it's a hard problem to solve. Like I appreciate, and I think the last ATP they talked about this, which I feel like we need to say is that obviously this is a very hard problem to solve, but they are the most, like, computer engineers at Google and Apple and Microsoft and at Amazon as well. They're the most talented voice recognition engineers in the world. Other than maybe there are people like at that Hound voice assistant that was announced last year, where they had the guy. He gave, like, it was like the founder or something. He gave a string of like 45 seconds worth of commands asking like geographical information, population information, all the stuff. Like he just rattled off 30 seconds of a pre-prepared script of information to get, and the thing just spent like the next minute and a half listing off all of these things one after the other that he'd asked for, like that kind of thing. And the people who made Siri over at Nuance have since left Apple and started another voice thing called Viv, which is again kind of that same idea, more powerful and able to string things together. But I appreciate this is a hard problem, but within the constraints of what a company like Google or Apple has to work with, I appreciate that you can't just go all in. You have to have a lot of infrastructure set up on the back end, and it's that part that's not there yet. The voice parsing is actually pretty good. It's the software that powers it that actually does things in the physical world or does things in the digital world that become physical. That is where the broken link is so far.
Yeah. Well, then there's the other aspect of we don't necessarily want everything to be relying on voice, right?
You don't want everything, yeah. I would love to be able to do everything with voice, but I wouldn't want to rely on it.
But a lot of people don't want voice, but they still want the functionality of the automation.
Yeah.
So right. So you should be able to have either like text input or buttons that can be pre-assigned to certain things or whatnot, right? Like and that's the thing. I don't know. I must trust that it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
I just like it to be sooner than later.
Yeah. Cool. Did that cover automation? Because we're still in follow-up here.
Yeah, I think that's a good start to it. I just wanted to kind of get that out there.
In the follow-up that I had here, we talked in the past lots about SpaceX, and no, they did not launch a rocket this week. Although apparently they have like 16 more. Like they have like 2 per month until the end of the year. We had discussed in past episodes about how their hangar of landed rockets is getting pretty full. It can store 5. They've now got 4. And that we had talked a little bit about how there's Mike, you had mentioned an engineering term, something to do with the amount of time it would take before something fails.
MTBF.
Mean time before failure or something?
Between failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had talked about that term, and apparently SpaceX is well aware of this. Surprise, surprise. But they've been talking with, there's actually obviously insurance involved with spaceflight when one company is contracting out another company to bring their very expensive equipment into space. That's an expensive thing, and it's a dangerous thing. It's a risky thing. And the risk of reusing rockets is really that we don't know what that repeatability factor is. But apparently SpaceX already has very high levels of the insurance underwriters have very high levels of confidence in SpaceX being able to do this. They've seen it several times now. That really adds to the confidence. And it's already a lot cheaper to launch a satellite or something to space with SpaceX, whereas other companies aren't necessarily at the same point yet. And we're basically at the point. There's a company that they mentioned in this LA Times article that is excited to be the first. Like, there's a lot of glamour in being the first company to kind of trust SpaceX with launching a reused rocket for the first time. And I don't think they're going to put anything really expensive or really unique on that rocket, the first one that they relaunch. But it's an important thing to get somebody excited. And the fact that they've been so successful means that people are actually doing that. And the key thing that I want to say here, we don't have to talk about this for a really long time, is that in the last 2 years, the insurance rate for Falcon 9 has dropped 50%, which I thought was really interesting. Just that it's already they've been doing it so consistently. They had the couple failures last year, but since then they've been doing really, really a good job of getting that first launch up, and now it's just basically going to be convincing them that the reusability of the rockets is actually a viable thing. I'm very excited. I know you guys aren't, but I'm very excited.
No, I'm excited to see this get to a point where it can become just an everyday thing. Like once you get, it's similar to, ride sharing, where once the insurance and the policy gets on board with it, then it's just ubiquitous. So hopefully this gets to the same point where it's just, space travel and reusing rockets, that's just pretty run of the mill.
Yep. I don't know if you guys are aware of, on a related note, on the reusability of these things, that most of the Tesla kind of where the traditional engine and trunk would be, they're these massive crumple zones that protect passengers in the event of an accident. Apparently, the Falcon rockets have a similar thing for landing, and they were saying that one of these crumple zones on the SpaceX lander, like where the legs actually connect to the rocket, one of them got pretty much as destroyed as it could be, because again, if you'll recall, the last 2 have been coming from geostationary transfer orbit, like the high ones where they end up coming in really fast. It basically that the one leg sustained the maximum amount of damage. Like the crumple zone took the maximum amount of impact that it really could before they would expect it to fail. And I just thought that was like, okay, so they're thinking about this. And even if you can't reuse 100%, like the rocket, you can't just like land it back down and then fire it up again. Obviously,
Right.
there's like 3 seconds of fuel left or something when they finish. But even if you just have to kind of swap out the airbags of a rocket or the like the crumple areas, that's still a massive savings versus just having the entire rocket be wasted
Yeah.
or having it explode or crash into the ocean somewhere. So I think even with like the fact they're taking that in consideration and adding parts that can be easily swapped out when they do get damaged, but not actually destroy the entire rocket, I think that's a really important step. And I'm glad to hear that they're thinking of that and that it actually is working the way it's expected to.
Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting when you get into engineering and design of stuff. Like, yeah, like you said, in theory, you'd be able to just fire it up back up right away, but that's not feasible.
Yeah.
Aside from the fuel aspect, like you need to expect some sort of damage. So, like, not just with rockets and cars, but even with just machinery and parts of systems and stuff, there's like parts of it that are designed to wear down and get replaced regularly. But like you said, saving the main part, which would be a lot more expensive to replace if you didn't have those other things. Like there's parts of drilling tools that you have just things on it that are designed to just take wear as they're used, and then you gauge the use of them by how much is worn down, and then you just replace that wear zone, and then you're good to go again. So yeah, it's really cool how much thought goes into it and how practical it is.
Yeah.
Like it's just you're realistic about it, and that's the whole point of engineering, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. So Mike, why don't you move us on to the next piece of follow-up? Wait,
Hold
what?
on.
Oh yeah, Nick.
And that's what Elon Musk is up to this week.
So Mike, what else do you have in follow-up?
We have the CRTC following the lead of the U.S. Communications Division that I can't seem to recall off the top of my head. But in the same way that they were looking at the T-Mobile binge on plans and saying, what do we need to consider with this and how fair is it and whatnot. It wasn't a formal review or anything. It was just they were looking at it a bit closer.
This would be the FCC?
Yes, that sounds right. I was going to say FTC, but that's the free trade. But yeah, FCC sounds right.
Yeah.
So the CRTC, the Canadian analog, is looking at a similar program that companies have here where it has zero rating services. So they'll either offer their own software or programming or whatever at zero cost or zero data cost anyway to consumers, or they'll offer third-party services at zero data cost, such as like Netflix or Spotify or whatever. So these companies will have their data caps, and they'll say if you use these apps, they won't count towards your data allowance. And currently, there are no laws that restrict that, or to my knowledge, even really regulate it. It's just kind of a fairly free market right now. And the CRTC is looking at it a bit closer to say, okay, is there anything we need to consider to keep this fair and non-monopolizing or non-prohibitive to other services? So, have you guys used zero rating or taken advantage of zero rating offers from either ISPs or mobile carriers?
I can start because I have a couple of things that I could share, experiences that I've had. So the first one, when we were on Roger's plan before, I used NHL Game Center that came with that quite a bit, and that was really nice. Like it's $150 if you buy it separately, but with the like $150 for the season. But if you just have a subscription to their package, you're obviously paying way more than $150 to them, so they throw it in as an added bonus. So that's nice. I don't know exactly how much, if you have like a fairly substantial cable package or even one of the basic ones, how many games would actually cover anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Like I've found the Bell app that we have now covers a lot of those games anyways. The other thing that I just wanted to say is going even further, like yes, you can say I haven't seen a plan in Canada that does it really, but plans in the States for a while have said, oh, unlimited media streaming. You can stream video or music as much as you want, and they include something like 25 services. There are plans now, the kind of share plans or the big data plans from Rogers and Fido, that not only have unlimited Spotify included, but they actually include a Spotify subscription. So you get like the $10 a month subscription to Spotify as part of your plan, and it's just bundled in. I don't love that because, first of all, I don't use Spotify, so if I like, that would be a disincentive for me to sign up for one of those plans because it has to come with Spotify, and so I'm paying more for something that I'm already paying for elsewhere. There's no incentive for me to sign up for a share plan, and yeah, the whole thing does strike me as kind of odd. I don't know if they said, well, like if they partnered with Google Play Music, with Apple Music, with Spotify, with a number of different companies, and they said you can get a subscription to any of these included in your bundle, I think I might have an easier time being okay with that. But having it locked down to one that you have to pay for, that you have to get with your subscription, there's no avoiding that, the extra cost that does incur. It's weird to me. It just strikes me as not great policy.
Yeah, I think that is a little bit different than what they're reviewing, though. I know what you're saying, but
it's even worse. Like, it's the next level up. It's like actually bundling a subscription in,
right,
as opposed to just saying you can use whatever service you want unlimited.
I can't imagine them forcing you to make a Spotify account if you get.
No, they wouldn't force you to make an account, but like you're paying for the account whether you use it or not.
Paying for it in the sense of it being included.
Right. Like, well, the same thing with unlimited long distance minutes or having unlimited minutes. Like, I don't care about that. I'm not going to use those minutes.
Right.
I stay under 150 that I have in my plan, and I have for the last 4 years.
Yeah, like I guess it's not explicit, but you're assuming that in some way you're paying for that. Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nick, have you had any experience with that?
Nope.
No.
Would you see that as an incentive to go with a certain carrier if they offered, say, free podcast streaming?
Because podcast streaming?
As an example for what you use.
I want it.
Like, you know what I mean, though, right?
Well, yeah, no, but like, I'm not going to go with Rogers just because they offer Game Center Live, because the assumption, as Rob said, is that I could just buy Game Center Live and not be tied to crappy Rogers.
Yeah.
Right.
Stay with Tech Savvy and watch whatever the hell I want, whenever the hell I want.
Right. Exactly. Assuming it's in their package, but like the CBC or TSN or whatever package.
Whatever. But like, it's also, it's interesting because I am extremely tempted by, I think the package is called AFL Live.
Right.
So I could watch my beloved West Coast Eagles do the thing, play the sports, score the points, yay.
So all else being equal, though, so aside from quality of service and, price, we'll even say, if you could pay one cost for one service and another cost for another that offered another type of service as included in the plan, would that be an incentive for you to go over?
I feel like the question is ridiculous. So, like, if everything was equal, everything, Tech Savvy didn't exist because the telecoms had finally killed it off. So I was choosing between, like, Shaw, Bell, Rogers, and Telus or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were all exactly the same price because, non-official collusion is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was offering Game Center Live, and the other was offering, I don't know, free access to Ponies Live.
Yeah.
Yes, I would probably go with the Game Center Live, where everything else equal.
Because I think that's the corporation's worry, is that allowing this type of thing will motivate customers to go with one over the other without considering the added value from other aspects. Like, because the easiest thing to quantify is, this includes this other one doesn't include this, so I'm going to go with this, even though you might be getting a far crappier service, but you don't know that yet because you haven't used them. and you
Yeah.
might not be doing research and asking for, recommendations on internet service or whatever. Because
Well, caveat, is it emptor or empor?
I don't know.
I
Damn
don't
it.
know.
I gotta learn my Latin.
I recognize caveat, but not the other word.
Emptor. Caveat emptor. The principle that the buyer alone is responsible for checking the quality and suitability of goods before a purchase is made.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, the other thing that I find weird, like Fido and Rogers seem like, maybe it's just because I know them the best, but it really seemed like they're pushing, they bundle so many different things in. Like Fido has now also bundles a subscription to Vice in with their plans.
Really?
Um, they have like Rogers bundles in, I think, Next Media or Post Media, not Post Media, some like magazine subscription service.
Oh, wait, which one?
Next,
Rogers?
yeah, Rogers. I
Oh,
forget.
Rogers is it CTV Globe Media?
No, it's
Is
like
that
it's specifically magazine
Yeah.
subscription.
No, but CTV Globe Media has a lot of magazines. That's why
That-
I'm asking.
I don't unless there's a name for that kind of thing, like unless that bundle has a name already. I'm not sure it's the same thing that you're talking about. I'll find it. It is Texture, 150 of the world's best magazines for 24 months. Yeah.
So do we agree that people look at price mostly? Like they'll and anything extra is just bonus. Like no one's gonna choose one over the other based on a subscription to texture.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I mean,
except for
maybe
like that
not Texture,
handful of
but
texture readers.
I was going to say I know people who would potentially make the decision on Game Center Live because of how much they would use it.
Right.
Sure.
These they're not so much value added. At least in my opinion, that these plans, and I'll using Rogers as an example because to me they're the group that ties in the most. If you go in and look at the Rogers phone plans, which I'm doing right now, and I would encourage you to go and look if you haven't in a while, they're not so much adding these things in to get customers. They're trying to lock customers in once they get accustomed to these things being in their plan. Like this is a long game in that 2 years down the road, they don't want to switch away from their plan when their contract's up because they love Rogers Game Center Live or because they love texture. Like so with a Rogers share plan, which I think is really expensive. I think Rogers share plans, they're not as expensive necessarily as they used to be, but like for a 1 gigabyte plan with 300 minutes, it's $65 a month. That's a lot more than it used to be for no tab. If you want like the tab where you end up with a more expensive phone on a discount, it's $80 a month for that same
Oh
thing.
wow.
But they give you Rogers Game Center Live with a share plan. They give you have a choice of Spotify, Texture, or Show Me. And so basically, if you want music or video or I guess magazines, 150 magazine subscriptions, but they also give you, and this is the weirdest part to me, they give you like Roam Like Home, which is a Rogers service, lets you for $5 a day go to the US and I think there's 175 countries now. It'll let you roam using data from your data plan for only $5 a day, which I think it caps out at like 14 days out of the month. Like if you're gone an entire month, you won't pay every day. You'll pay up to a maximum cap. But the idea of that, where if I don't have a share plan, they will not let me pay to use data internationally. They won't let me pay $5 a day to use my plan's data because I'm not on a share plan. That seems so strange to me. Why wouldn't they want me to pay them more money to use a service just because I'm not on the more expensive plan? It's
Because
weird,
they
but
would make so much more money off of you if you were on that
well,
plan.
exactly. So that's what I'm saying. It's not a value add for people who are not on the service as an incentive to get them on the service. It's a way for once they are with the service to not want to leave because they have all these value adds. Right now, it just comes across as really expensive. Where if I wanted a Rogers share plan where I actually had enough data to cover my desired use levels, it would cost me like $250 a month. And it's just, for most people, I think, unless they don't really know that there is different, unless either Rogers is the only option where they are, or it's the only thing they ever look at, or they've been with Rogers for years and they just stick with whatever plan they have. It's not a great deal. It's just that
Right.
it's for people that don't really know to look for better or other.
Right. Like right now, we're paying for both Netflix and ShowMe,
Mm-hmm.
as well as our internet package.
Right.
So if Shaw came out and said we're including Netflix and ShowMe, well, I guess ShowMe's already included in Shaw. Say we're including Netflix. Actually, I don't know if it's included or it's just discounted. But either way, say everything that we're currently paying for right now is already included with Shaw, and I just do the math and see if it makes sense for me to switch. Like, and I don't know if people do that or not. Like to me, that's what it would come down to either way.
Right.
Regardless of what it came with, if it came with texture, I'd like, well, I don't use that, so I don't care. And
Right.
it's not like, oh, I'll get it because I'll start using it. Even with Game Center, it's like if I'm not already paying to watch hockey, I probably wouldn't go with a plan that includes Game Center because I probably wouldn't watch it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. Maybe that's why to me this doesn't really seem like a big deal because it's not a huge motivator for me in choosing where I go
Right.
as far as the zero rating aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate that the CRTC is trying to at least look at it closer and get
Right.
consultation on it, and hopefully maybe they're hearing the same thing, that it's really not having that much of an effect as far as ultimately where people are choosing to sign up. Is like you said, if they get accustomed to it, then that's fine, I guess. Like that's up to them.
I guess, yeah.
Because I think the whole thing is limiting competition, right? And it shouldn't be, oh well, customers want to stay where they are. It's like that's the whole point of the free market, is to encourage your customers to stay. If
Yeah.
you're unfairly drawing customers to you / away from others, then that's a different thing.
Yeah. That's fair. So I don't know how much time we're going to have to cover. There's a bunch of stuff we wanted to talk about this week. I think that there are a couple of really kind of overarching things here. Mike, I really do want to talk not necessarily about this thing that Elon Musk said again in an interview. As much as I
no,
want
but I already said the thing.
so I want to talk about what he said and get into, like, so Elon Musk was interviewed by I guess The Verge, and he went way, and I think this might be taken slightly out of context from the actual interview if you go as to where they were going, but Elon Musk thinks that there's a good chance that our universe is a simulation running inside of some higher intelligence's computer. And the reason that he thinks this is very likely is that we are very quickly growing computer systems to the point that even something like 50 years ago, it would have been unthinkable to be able to have the kind of podcast we're doing right now. Like, it would be absolutely, it wouldn't even be unthinkable. It would be like, how would that even work? There's just there's no, like, we can have a telegraph conversation. Is that what you mean? Like, there's just no way to really even conceive of modern life. And so the thinking is that in 50 more years, or in whatever number of more years, our computers will be able to have our entire universe programmed into them easily. Like, it won't even be a question. It would be like, of course we have like billions of simulations running. Obviously, like, why wouldn't we? It's The Sims on steroids, like multiplied to a billion times. So I don't. What did you guys think about this once you started? Like, I thought about this for 6 hours. Once I heard it, I was like, oh my god, it's simulations all the way down.
I will say that I feel as though many people have suggested that we're living in a simulation before Elon Musk, and it's only now that Elon Musk has said it that we're actually talking about it.
I
also
talk about it.
I also think that this episode would probably lose something if it were transmitted entirely by Morse code.
It would.
Rob, are you there, Rob? What do you think of the latest Elon Musk stuff this week?
It would take a lot longer.
I agree wholeheartedly, Rob. What about you, Mike? Just take forever.
Yeah. So what do you think, Nick? Like, that's the thing. I didn't want to necessarily go over, like, I didn't even listen to the thing. It got me thinking about simulations, and I want to talk about what the implications would be, what you think about it.
Oh, I haven't looked into it that much, but like I that's part of physics that kind of I just lose interest in because it is so far removed from my daily concerns and
Right.
experiences. That's
Mhm.
like I also think it has a lot to do with agnosticism in general because it's like, well, maybe it is, but could also be ruled by a giant reptile, and it's pointless to talk about.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like, the same way that you had your shower thoughts moment. This is kind of like a weed thoughts moment. It's like it's basically philosophy at that point,
Mhm.
and it's like kind of half who cares and half will never know anyway. So who cares? Like, it's it's interesting to think about, and I guess you can make it work with that kind of reasoning. How we've advanced so quickly, and we already have our own simulations and models that fairly accurately represent what we already know. So, and you could say it's not coincidence that the way we found the universe to behave is very closely modeled by math and laws and whatnot that they could be pre-programmed in.
Yeah.
But then you're basically looking at the intelligent design argument, and that's kind of where it's almost going. But instead
Yeah.
of an intelligent designer, you're talking about a computer that's running things. So yeah, I, it's interesting, but I wouldn't focus on it for too long.
Well, so my thought is, being a scientist, this discussion is entirely philosophy unless there's a way that we can test or predict things about the universe based on whether it was a simulation or not. And I think that as far as we know, that's not the case yet. We don't have any way to test whether our universe is just kind of a computer program running on some massive hard drive.
Maybe Trump is like a bug, and
I don't think we know
it's
how
just
bugs work.
bringing the whole software down.
That is a very U.S. centric way of thinking about it.
As
The
opposed to
issue.
your Elon Musk centric way of thinking.
I don't have an Elon Musk centric. I don't even know that I necessarily agree with him. I don't actually think we're living in a simulation, and I think the odds are actually very low that we're living in a simulation. Simply because our like all the computing power that we have at the moment, which is a staggering amount considering what it was just 10 years ago. Considering all of that, we're basically like our most powerful supercomputers are only able to model, like it takes like an hour to model a few nanoseconds of human brain activity. And while that feat is impressive in itself, considering again where we have been in the very recent past, it's a far cry to think that all of the trillions of atoms that are in the universe and all the space that is taken up, like Minecraft is a massive world, but if you actually look at how much space it is, it's not that big compared to, like, it's tiny compared to our universe. And I just think that to get to a simulation is that large and that intricate where so one of the things that I don't think that we're in a simulation. That's my own personal thought. But I also think that there is basically intelligent life similar to or more advanced than us spread throughout the universe in billions of planets. Like I just think the universe is teeming with life, and we haven't seen it yet because it's so big. And there's the whole thing that I don't know if you guys are too familiar, but the fact that we don't really know about dark energy, but it's stretching our universe really quickly. Like the spaces between galaxies are getting further and further to the point that at some point in our history, we won't be able to see any other galaxies. We'll be able to see our galaxy. We'll be able to see the Andromeda galaxy because they're eventually going to collide. But that's going to be it. That's going to be our conception of what the universe is. Everything else out there is going to be empty space. So it's conceivable that in the last 14 billion years, we were a lot closer together and we could have seen communications going on. But everything is just so spread out now that we only see a tiny portion of our universe, and that everything else is just unobservable at the moment. And so the idea of being able to simulate really an infinite universe from our perspective, because we know that there's stuff that we can't see further out. So what's to stop it from being infinite? it just seems like you can't. How do you simulate a near infinity situation? You'd need so much computing power. You'd need so many resources to keep all the positions and every byte of information about the entire universe in a computer or in some kind of system where you can store information.
Rob, I'm going to explain all of that away by saying it's all relative, and our perception of infiniteness and complexity is relative to what we know. So
Yeah.
you can't. So for all we know, that could be nothing relative to what the almighty reptile is simulating.
That's a fair point, and that's why this is philosophy, because there's
No,
no
exactly.
testable principles. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I know what you're saying, but in the context of talking about whether we're in a simulation, there's no grounds for it. There's no reasoning that supports, because we're theoretically pre-programmed with the conception of space and time.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say that if the Flying Spaghetti Monster is running a simulation and that's why we're here, if he runs our simulation with any similarity to how I run Boxcar 2D, I think we're in very good hands.
I'm sure that's true. Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. This whole thing really kind of boggles my mind. I don't know if you guys have heard the argument, not the argument, but the idea that there could be a civilization out there that both on scale and on kind of mental acuity complexity is like we are to ants, and that like an ant by the side of a highway doesn't perceive cars driving by it. We may be not alone at all in the universe, and there could be, I mean, not only just in three-dimensional space, there could be something that's just so different and so much more complex than us than we could ever imagine. Like, there are more ants than people on the Earth. They outnumber us like 1,000,000 to 1 or something. Like, it's crazy how many ants there are. But their existence is so small compared to ours that there's no even conceiving of it. And it's very possible that even in just 3 dimensions, that could be a thing. That I think that's less likely, but it's very possible that higher dimensions do exist, that other beings, I guess like the only thing you call it is life, other life is able to perceive those higher dimensions, whereas we're just absolutely not able to see it.
Yeah, that's basically what I was getting at with what I was saying.
Yeah. So simulation, I don't think so.
That's the philosophy corner.
But it doesn't really matter right now unless we have some way of testing what's
until there's a
going on.
falsifiable hypothesis.
Yeah.
It remains philosophy. And so this week on Philosophy Chat.
Bye, chat.
Next week we'll talk about string theory.
Yeah. So.
But the math works.
Nick, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about possibly the most important science and tech story of the week.
I'm shocked we didn't start with it. Yeah.
I agree, and I feel terrible, but in my defense, I just saw it, like, as we started this conversation. So why don't you tell us why we should all be running and screaming for the hills to isolate ourselves from society?
Well, Mike and I are pretty far ahead in that we are close to some mountains, which is historically where one runs when civilization is going to collapse.
Yeah.
The superest superbug has been bred.
Yeah.
So
well, bred being a strange way to describe it, but yes. We have bred it, but not advertently.
No, but that's how breeding works sometimes. Anyway, sometimes you have happy little accidents. And sometimes they're terrifying accidents.
Yes.
So antibiotics for the last, I don't know, since World War II, they've been just super. Since we discovered penicillin, they've been we've had a grand old time suppressing disease. But the thing is, each new antibiotic will wipe out, it's like the sterilization things with Lysol and stuff, kills 99.9% of germs.
Yep.
that 0.1% that remains is the kind that was resistant to the antibiotic treatment you used.
Mhm.
And so as time has gone on, we've we've kept wiping out 99.9%, 99.9%, 99.9%, and then each and every time someone out there goes on a regimen of antibiotics and doesn't finish,
Mhm.
they can potentially leave behind that, you know, it might even be more than that 0.1%.
Yep.
It's a strain of bacteria that were going to be wiped out but didn't quite get wiped out.
Mhm.
So they developed a resistance to that antibiotic. And so, what is it? Like since the discovery of penicillin, not 100 years, but getting on there.
Yeah.
Finally, we have a superbug which has survived the antibiotic of last resort.
Yep. And for a while, we've known that there are antibiotics that are resistant, or bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics, like even strong antibiotics. MRSA is one of the things that MRSA is actually, like, it's methicillin resistant. And that was a penicillin derivative that for a while was the de facto, like that was the thing that just you took methicillin and you didn't have that bacteria anymore. And then they developed, there was a Staph aureus that developed resistance to methicillin, and then that took over, like that spread throughout hospitals really quickly. And now we're coming to the point that we still had these kind of bastions of safety where you could even have MRSA and you could still take this antibiotic or this set of antibiotics that would be able to stand up to it and just take it out. But it was almost inevitable that the current technology, I'll call it technology, the current kind of bacteria fighting technology we had can't constantly keep fighting with evolution. We're not designing resistant antibiotics or antibiotics that are strong enough to defeat resistant bugs. We're not designing them by evolution. We're designing them by hand, basically. And there are computers that are working on kind of coming up with tweaks to things, but it's nowhere near the speed of bacterial replication and evolution.
Well, and apparently antibiotic research was also huge in the 70s and 80s. This is
Yeah.
according
Oh yeah,
to
it
one of our
was.
profs that I don't remember now. And we just kind of got a really good battery of antibiotics and went, it's probably good enough.
Yeah.
And it was until last week.
And we've been seeing these stories for a while where people are saying, this is coming, and they keep getting stronger. There's no end in sight. It was basically a matter of time, but now we're seeing that the time is right now.
Yeah, it's like there were so many warnings, and they were warning about last week,
Yeah.
which is terrifying reality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have experienced this recently or in the past couple of years where you go to a doctor and like a walk-in clinic, say, or just a family doctor, not the hospital or anything, but say like you go to a family doctor and say, hey, I've got this sore throat, got a cough, whatever. They take a saliva test or urine test or whatever, and they test it and they say, oh well, we can't detect anything, but there's slightly higher white cell count, whatever.
Yeah.
Here's an antibiotic, and it's like, well, what is it for? And it's like, oh, just in case there's an infection.
Hmm.
And
Really?
yeah,
Who are these people?
this happened to us when I took Emma to the walk-in clinic one time, or the family clinic we use, and we thought she had a fever, she had a cough, and they tested her. They couldn't find anything. But like, oh, here's a prescription for or they said, would you like a prescription for an antibiotic? And I said, well, for what? Like there's nothing there. And it's like, oh, just in case. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like we'll hold tight. Like,
Yeah. If
but
it gets much worse, we'll come back.
yeah, but it's the kind of thing where people are just so used to demanding antibiotics that doctors just offer them without, like, unsolicited, without even
Okay,
asking for them.
that's not the case in Ontario, in my experience. Like you have to fight for antibiotics if you really want them.
Right.
Like a
For
lot of
those
like
marginal
every
cases.
doctor I've been to
Yeah.
when I've been sick, like I think I remember going when I had like this weird eye infection that I don't know this is gonna get graphic and gross. I'm sorry, but there are two usual discharge colors, and I had like a third weird one. It's like if it's green or yellow, it's this or this thing, and I had a gray discharge, and I was like, this is bizarre. I'm going to the doctor.
Hmm.
And so they looked at me. They're like, huh, I have no idea what that is. And I don't want to give you antibiotics.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. And so they're like, what I want you to do is just, go get some eye drops and keep flushing it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't work after X number of days, here's a prescription for antibiotics. Don't use it. But, if you have to after like a week, it's there if you need it.
Right.
Right.
And so that was, when I had bizarre option C, they were like, okay, maybe we'll give you antibiotics.
But only if you really, like, they caution, they're very clear, like, only if you really need it.
And they give you a lecture at the doctor's office and at the pharmacy that if you start taking this, you will take it to its completion because because Ontario is right next to Quebec where they've had C. difficile for how long now?
Yeah.
And so superbugs are a concern.
Yeah.
And
I'm at the point where I was scared. When I got knee surgery, my knee got partially infected after about a month. Around the time I got the stitches out, and they gave me an antibiotic, and it ended up, I think I went through the whole course and it ended up not being strong enough, and so they gave me not a resistant one, like it wasn't a resistant bacteria, it just didn't cover whatever infection it was. And I remember being terrified. I was just like, no, are you sure this is long enough? Should I keep taking it? Should I get an extra dose to just make sure that I cover it? And it ended up being okay, I think. I got over it and it was fine.
You had your stitches for a month?
I had my stitches I think it was around a month. It was a lot longer than I was supposed to.
Oh, wow.
It was because I got surgery and then about a week later I went home. And yeah, in an ideal world, I wouldn't have had them in for that long, but it just worked out that way. That presumably I think that's why I still have the kind of largeness of scars that I do, is that there were stitches in for so long.
Do you still have scarring?
Yeah.
Okay, because we're gonna just go right off the rails. I still have a sizable lump.
Okay.
From my scarring. It's odd.
Right. My surgery, I don't know about yours, but mine was laparoscopic, so there are 5 tiny holes around my knee. There's a big scar where they had to take a piece of my hamstring out to replace the ACL, but for the most part, it's just little holes. There were a couple of stitches in each of them, but now I just have a bunch of scars dotting around my knee.
No, I have one scar that's about 3 centimeters, kind of above my left butt cheek, basically.
Okay.
And that's where they open to drill into the bone and put the rod in.
Oh,
I'm so sorry, listeners.
And then I have one about, how big is this? 5-6 centimeters.
Okay.
And that's where they put the screws in to hold the bone to the rod.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
And that's where there's still a sizable lump.
Yeah.
So did you get a hip replacement?
No, it was an intermedullary rod. So all the bone is original, and it's just there's a titanium rod that held it all together while the bone was healing. But because I'm so young relative to everyone else that breaks their hip, if you get a hip replacement, I think it's easier, but you have to replace it every 5 to 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so if you install that at 26, that's
a lot of installation.
a lot of replacements, yeah.
Right.
So they were like, yeah, we'll go with the bone. It seems reasonable.
So you don't have any titanium, a rod?
No, I do. The thing is, they put the rod in there so that the bone can heal.
Yeah.
But then it's literally inside the bone.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I
not
don't
replacing that.
any of the metal that's in there anymore, but to take it out would be needlessly intrusive.
Right. Yeah, that sounds.
Because like
That,
every
oh
surgery
my
carries
God.
risks, so
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not hurting anything, so you don't take it out.
Right.
Well, there are a couple screws I could take out, but they haven't been an issue so far as I can tell.
Yeah. Makes sense. That yeah, surgery is terrifying. Even just going under the anesthetic the first time, they were like, yeah, there's some risk to anesthetic. And I was like, okay, well, go ahead.
Yeah. Not in your
The-
kind of state of health, though.
Yeah, it's still
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's less
Oh.
risky for my state, but it's risky in general to have anesthetic.
Like,
Like I
there's
know
a risk, but it's probably negligibly small for you.
No, it's not.
there was a girl that my family was related to, like distant relative. She went under anesthesia for like some orthodontic surgery for her jaw, and she died on the table because of it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
When I
Like-
went under general for like my wisdom teeth, and I was like, yeah, knock me out, and I didn't like think.
I did
twice
exactly
about
the same thing because
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to be awake for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no alternative. But yeah, it's not non-trivial. It's not trivial.
it. There was an
be under.
alternative for me if I wanted it, but I was like, I
Yeah,
don't want to
same
be
here.
awake
I
for
could
it.
have been awake.
Yeah.
but- yeah.
Well,
I
I
didn't
mean,
know it was
they
that
did
thing.
not give me the option. They just put me out. I was also in a lot of pain, so I'm kind of glad for it.
Well, yeah, yours has like my bones were fine,
Yeah.
so I didn't. I had the
My
option.
crippling
But
bonitis.
bone stuff is really really painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bone stuff.
It's true though. It really is. It's scary.
Yeah, no,
Um,
but so it's funny because they're like, totally low risk. Like it probably won't happen, but you could die.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not ready for this conversation to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, we may have a small after show, but we'll wrap it up for this week. I'll say thank you guys, everyone, for listening to that grotesque depiction of scarring and surgery at
I'm
the very end
sorry.
there. But you can head to unwindmedia.com/futurechat to see the notes for this show. I put a link to that Hound demo, which if you haven't listened to it, I really think that you should go and listen or watch/listen because it's a video. It's very interesting, and that was from June of last year. So they've since done more impressive demos, but this is the preliminary demo that they did. So yeah, head to unwindmedia.com/futurechat to see that and past episodes, and we'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Toodaloo.
Okay, so you guys, or Mike at least, you want to briefly talk about the black market thing? Is that
Yeah.
happening?
Do we want to talk? Like we talked about it quite a bit in the Slack. I don't know if we want to talk about it here.
we can mention? I think it's really interesting. I would love to try it.
I did not talk about it at all, so feel free.
Yeah. So for listeners/viewers that haven't seen this, I don't even know if this was covered in the States. I guess it wouldn't have been because it's this article anyway
Yeah,
seems to be more
CBC.
Canadian centric. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it reminds me of when the Android TV news came out, and it's like this isn't really news. It's just kind of coming into light. So this seems like it's kind of the same thing where
Yeah.
there's Kijiji ads for cell phone plans that are being offered at Saskatchewan and Manitoba rates, regardless of where you live. And I guess the gist of it is that you set up a phone plan with, Kudo or Fido.
Yeah.
And you register under your own number and province, whatever, and then you send these representatives on Kijiji your details, and they work their magic, and all of a sudden you have a cheaper phone plan.
Yep.
And we are speculating on how it works because the concept of it's pretty straightforward. Is you can get the rates that are being offered in other provinces. And we've covered that extensively at how silly it is that this exists. But
Yes.
I think we were more or less in agreement that it was most likely an inside contact at these companies that they just changed the rates on these
Yeah.
plans. Just I'm assuming like some sort of drop down saying give them this rate.
Right.
And that's how it works. But because I honestly don't know how other method would work.
Right. Yeah, it has to be someone on the inside. There's no alternative to it.
Yeah.
To me.
And I would have thought that these carriers would be able to just detect when the plan doesn't match their registered province or number. Like,
Yeah.
and if they didn't before, they definitely will now, I'm assuming, because this is actually in the news. And it was weird that, they actually quoted one Kijiji guy, like an actual rep, in the article and basically advertised for him. But I don't know
That,
why you'd want to do that as someone who's providing this
oh yeah,
service,
I
where it's
agree.
like you're being exposed like that and basically killing your business.
Yeah, in theory, I think it could be similar to what we do, where we talk about unlimited plans all the time, where they're kind of getting brazen in that they've gotten away with it for so long. And so he's really like, the upside is that I'll get to sell a bunch more plans, and the downside is maybe they'll catch me, but it doesn't seem like they care because this isn't really new. It's just that it came around again into CBC posting a story about it, and I think every year that the disparity between plans in Saskatchewan and soon to be formerly Manitoba are so cheap mean that they like it comes back around as those plans get so much cheaper in comparison to what you get in the rest of the country.
Yeah. When I think we kind of concluded that we're not going to see those types of prices anywhere else because they can't afford that, but they'll
Yeah,
continue
yeah.
to offer those there because there is that competition. So, um, I don't know. I don't think I'd ever do that like the way that they're saying because I'd probably get in trouble for it
Okay, Mike, here's
at
the
the most.
thing.
Plus, I'm already getting a good deal. So,
Yeah, can I posit you a what if?
yeah.
I think this is what I would do, but I
Okay.
think that if you lost your grandfather plan, the next day you'd be like, all right, what are my options here? And you would find this and you'd be like, oh, great, perfect. I'll just do this. I know that's what I would do. I'd be like, it's worth the risk. This is so like this will pay off in like 3 months if it works. And if it doesn't, it's like, oh well, I lost a bit of money.
I guess.
What's the worst case scenario is that you end up paying exorbitant amounts of money as opposed to paying exorbitant amounts of money.
I think as long as the responsibility and liability like falls on the person offering the service, the same way with the Android TV boxes, where it's the host of the content that gets
Yeah. Yeah.
penalized, not the person doing the streaming, which is kind of selfish, but
Yeah.
well, I guess.
Well, I mean, the way these things work now is you can go on live chat and be like, "Hey, I'm moving to Manitoba. What are my options for cell phone plans?" And they'll be like, "Oh, we can sign you up for this plan," and then you just do it. There's no verification of address that goes on. Like there might, and I say this with a huge grain of salt because I don't think they really would, but like there might be IP-based checking, but from what I understand, they don't actually care if you live there. It's just you need a home address that they're in the system. And so
Yeah.
this might not even be really a loophole. It's just like, okay, this is a thing that happens.
Yeah. When they can do like it's the same thing with the data that we have. Like our plans are designed for feature phones that are using random like browsing, like
Yeah.
literally browsing. And when you have, tens of gigabytes being used per month, like that's not a feature phone being used for the random like Google search, right?
Yeah.
So it's and they could easily make those checks on their end, but they're
Yeah.
not, or if they are, they're saying, oh well, whatever. Like
Right.
so, yeah, maybe you're right. I mean, this is that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I have the Fido iOS My Account app. I'm obviously not using a flip phone
Right.
or a Nexus. Like even to the point that it's now clear to me that they don't care, or that there may be people very high up in the company that care, but customer service reps don't care at all how much you're charging as long as they fix your problem and get a good review whenever they pass along a survey. Like they don't care. And
Hmm.
so they're going to do what's in their best interest, while the higher ups might not even know there's a problem because they don't
Right.
ever really
They
get
don't look at
exposed
it.
to it.
Yeah.
Problem in the sarcasticest of quotes.
Right.
Yeah, it's not actually a problem. It's just like some people are taking advantage of a bad system.
Yeah. Well, and at this point, it's almost like a weighing of pros and cons or a cost benefit, I guess, where if they take away someone's grandfather plan because of this, the bad publicity they'd get is probably far worse
Yeah.
for their business than just allowing that person to
Right.
continue doing that, right?
Because it's a very marginal cost to
Right.
them. Where
Exactly.
the benefit of having these long-standing customers who
Yeah.
they've obviously, if they're grandfathered into an old plan, they're obviously loyal
Yeah.
to the company, then why not?
Yeah.
Nick, would you ever get one of these plans?
I am gonna go with a completely different topic. And have you
Interesting.
noticed that my stream has been much better this week?
Yes. I haven't noticed. I haven't noticed it's been bad.
I just realized I haven't noticed a problem, and I've been opening new tabs, and it hasn't completely bogged down my signal. So Chrome's had a few updates
Okay.
since I started using Firefox for this,
Right.
because at the time, for whatever reason, Chrome did not acknowledge software mutes.
Right.
So I could mute my mic, and it was like, nope, I still hear everything. And I was like, well, this is not useful for a podcast.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
cough and sneeze at times.
It's also not 10 o'clock yet. But
Right. Yeah,
That's
not the quality,
true.
just the muting. Yeah.
And so I've been sitting here kind of reading about other stuff while you guys talked, because we're an after show.
Sure.
And yeah, I just realized that I wasn't having problems.
It's good.
It's very exciting, I think.
Would you get the...
So, to your question...
I'm just curious.
Would I get one of these deals? I don't know. I really don't. I'm currently holding on to my deal that I signed in like 2010 in Ottawa. No. I signed up for this one in 2013 in London, I think.
That makes more... While you were in class, like in school, still.
Yeah, my TELUS contract was up, and that we talked about this on Future Chat. I was like, oh my god, they're going to give me a deal to try and keep me. And then
They did not.
they were like, hey, so you're $5 off a month on a plan that's worse than yours. And then they like, because listeners couldn't see that, I winked and like nodded at the camera.
Right.
And I was like, or I could go with Kudo, which is under your umbrella, and get a better deal for the same price. And they're like, well, I mean, yeah, you could do that. I was like, yeah, I could, and I think I shall.
I legitimately think that the big three are for older people or people paying their kids' cell phone plans, and so they know they can get away with higher prices, and that the discount brands are for kids/millennials now, like kids that have now grown up, and they realize what a ripoff the more expensive plans are, and they're looking for a cheaper alternative, and they're finding the discount plans. I think.
And I mean, it does work out if you have like 4 or 5 cell phones on the same plan. So everyone has a cell phone, and you have cable, and you have internet, and you have home phone, because I don't even know why, but somehow it's subsidizing everything else.
Yeah.
But so if you have all that, the bundle for everything collectively puts you ahead if you want every single one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But the pragmatist with less money than a baby boomer, because we went to university and then didn't just walk into a lifetime union job.
Right.
Or no, we didn't get the lifetime union job after high school. That was the difference.
Yeah.
So we look for better options, and by gum, we're finding them.
Yeah.
Us young hippies, their music, long hair, especially you two.
Definitely not you at all.
Get a haircut, Mike.
I don't have much hair to spare. A little bit there.
All right. You guys good to wrap up. I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah.
I would love to see some sort of cooperative model applied to telecoms.
That'd be fun.
I don't know how on earth you would do it. Like
collusion?
No, like the Costco model of telecoms. I'm feeling like you just put up. I mean, everyone makes you pay $100 when you join, so it doesn't really. But you just put up some like, this is more than normal, but it will pay off in the long run. Kind of like TechSavvy, I guess, because TechSavvy does that.
Right.
But instead of being a bulk repurchase or a bulk purchaser and redistributor, being, something bigger than that.
Right.
I think what I'm actually describing is a collective of like everyone getting together through some organization and putting up the infrastructure themselves. And as I realize that, I am inventing MTS and SaskTel again.
Yeah.
Implementing a government telecom. That is what I want.
Yeah.
Because the profit-driven ones are awful.
Yeah. Because
But
they're
then-
all about profits.
And I
The
feel like
taxes-
all kinds of stink is going to be raised if we just choose to nationalize telecommunications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Toodaloo.